Hello, boys. What are you doing over there? Fighting the Germans? Have you ever done you any harm? But I ask you, boys, what is democracy? Do you enjoy the same rights as white people do in America? You have been made the tool of the egotistical rich. There is a vast and insidious conspiracy at play here in Tulsa. Who are you? Giddy effing up! Let's ride. We are talking HBO's Watchmen Season 1, Episode 2, Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship. The AfterBuzz After Show starts right now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, buzz.
TikTok, 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 TikTok. That's right. It's about that time we are talking all things Watchmen, HBO's Watchmen, this revival of it, Season 1, Episode 2, Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship. Talk about an episode, talk about a ride.
Wow. Magnets.
Strong magnets.
Strong magnets, that is right. We are the magnet keepers. Who watches the Watchmen? More importantly, who watches the after show? All of you. And who are we? We are the panel that will be bringing this Watchmen to life. All the way to my left, far left, the one, the only, the Dream Team member himself, Mr. DC Comics, Ryan Nilsen.
Yes, Ryan Nilsen here, producer here at AfterBuzz TV and Popcorn Talk, produced DC Movie News. So excited to be here with Drew. I like being here with Drew. So amped to be here with Drew and Tehran today.
We are all so happy to be here with Mr. Party People herself.
Mr. Party People.
Yes, everything is gender neutral. Drew Jones is in the building. The party master herself, the one and only who brings everyone to the party.
Inclusive.
But me.
That's not what happened, but go off, sis.
We love having you on because your opinions are amazing. And also you are extremely knowledgeable about everything there is to be knowledgeable about, especially DC.
In the world.
That is right. That is a true thing. I, on the other hand, am the idiot that was not invited to Drew's party. My name is Tehran. I will be hosting and paneling on this. But, of course, all of you at home are hosting and paneling as well. We will be keeping an eye out on the chat. The chat has a lot to say. Ryan?
That's right. I am keeping an eye on the chat. We got Gracie and Ryan, good name, in the chat. She is very curious to see what we're thinking about the episode, thinking stuff about Jeremy Irons. So WTF was the first comment.
Well, that should be the first comment because that's how I felt. I am a DC connoisseur as well, and we talk all things right here. We're going to be breaking down this particular episode, HBO's Watchmen Season 1, Episode 2, Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship. In this way, first we have to discuss the I'm Will, Who Are You? The Interrogation of Will Reeves and that reveal. Will Reeves has friends in high places and he wasn't kidding. Usually when people say that, they're just saying stuff, but not Will. Hanging around, that's right, the reaction of seeing the chief hung. Christmas surprise, the White Knight. We see that night being unveiled. Nixonville Roundup, that attack, telling Topher the talk between mother and son, American Hero Story, Hooded Justice, and I do mean hooded, Memorial, that memorial and that keeping it in the closet, Ozzy's Play, our special segment, Buy or Sell.
Cha-ching is when we say something we bought about the episode and something we're selling. New angle to discuss the show.
We have some news and gossip you're going to want to stay tuned for, and our predictions where Drew has a crystal ball. She knows all.
I actually left that at home, but I'll just use the brain today.
You'll use the dot with the circle. Yeah, that's a Dr. Manhattan reference and so much more. What were your overall thoughts on this week's episode, Drew?
I like that we got some confirmations of some things I think we were suspecting last week, so I'm content with this so far.
Such a good episode.
Yeah, confirmations like, for example, Topher was Angela Abar's partner, and they took their kids after they were killed during the White Night. Really fascinating. I remember we were speculating last episode about this black couple adopting some white kids, and that's a trope that's kind of been putting on its head, and now we have some backstory to it. Really interesting. Learned a lot, and we got another weird scene with Jeremy Irons and as Ozymandias, so hopefully that's all going to lead somewhere. But yeah, this show, it's got me. There's so many unique metaphors, a lot of match cuts this episode, from scene to scene, from flashback to flashback. Pretty interesting. What do you think?
I think that we should all be ready for the drinking game in which you say the name
Damon Lindelof.
And we take a sip of whatever it is. I feel that this show is possibly the most interesting, intriguing, and enamoring show on television today. It is every bit as good as the hype. I am impressed each episode. I am waiting for the ball to drop, and so far the ball has not dropped. Watching Regina as the main star, she is amazing, an absolute amazing talent. Then we get, of course, Louis Gossett Jr. as Will Reeves. How crazy is that, to put acting royalty in the same scene? You're only going to get the top level of acting, and you do. Oftentimes I watch the show and have to remind myself, this is fantasy, they are acting. This is a world I totally buy into. The concept of Nixonville and referdations, very, very on point. Social commentary is on fleek. Are the kids still saying that, Drew?
I'm gonna say no.
No, because I saw a couple of the kids at your party using that term.
They were saying that, and you know what? You were just saying it now because we're live every 7 p.m. PST Sunday night. So if for those listening on audio, that's where you can catch us. Just want to throw that in real quick.
That's right. That's on fleek as well. I'm Will. Who are you? Interrogation of Will Reeves. We saw this interrogation of a person who by all means should be in jail and yet is not. What were your thoughts?
It was just really interesting to watch how obviously she didn't turn him in immediately, because I feel like she, you know, when you meet someone, you're like, I feel like we know each other. There's some connection, and then it's like, oh, you find out like we're cousins or something. Like I think she had that sort of
inkling.
Yeah.
By she, of course, you mean Angela Abar.
Angela Abar, yes.
Regina's character.
That was a unique way that she discovered that, and how she went to that that history, that museum, and you see the technology. The technology in this world has been introduced to us in a really unique way. It's kind of just in the background. Like, we know they don't have cell phones or iPhones. They still use pagers, but yet they still have this ability to do, I guess, reenactments in museums and just project people from that era, and also have the Secretary of State do like a video message while you can get DNA. It's just interesting how the technology can really vary in this show. But finding out that, you know, to get the referdations in Tulsa, she just used a swab from that coffee mug she had him use, and find out that she is his granddaughter. Reveal. I thought that was really fascinating. So they're related in some way. I think now we just got to ask, you know, who are her parents and what's been going on with that. And we still don't know about that baby from the first episode. But really interesting. I think Will is a really funny character. That ending just said it all. He's got friends in high places. Does he? I still don't know if he actually has powers or not, because he would have moved those pills, I think, and yet he didn't. So maybe he's just a pawn, or he's friends with people who do have these powers.
So we definitely see Will Reeves has some type of psychological hold on Angela. Here, he is very abrupt. He's almost harsh in his truth. He's got this mysterious way about him that's revealing all at the same time. We see that Angela and Will do have some sort of connection, but we aren't sure as of what yet. And then, of course, with the reveal that he is, in fact, her grandfather, and we are under the assumption that he is the child who grew up from the first episode. And now we have a storyline or a subplot to look forward to. Why do you think Angela did not take Will in to be arrested?
I think she's really logical, and it doesn't make sense. Like, it didn't make sense to arrest him, because how do you have a 105-year-old man string up, you know, this 200-something plus body? It just doesn't make sense. I don't think she thinks illogically. Like, I think she has to have reasoning behind it.
I also don't think she would have been able to go right there, because it might have revealed her identity, because she was called at her house and found the chief and found Crawford hung up while she wasn't in, you know, her vigilante costume. So it would have been, it could have risked her blowing her cover on that front. I also don't think, as what you were saying, it was just a logical thing. Like, she didn't really buy that he had done it. Maybe he witnessed it. Maybe he's a crazy old man. So I think she was trying to rule out all the possibilities. I mean, even when she goes to that crime scene and she's with Glass and he's kind of suspicious of her, interrogating her, because I think she would have had a more immediate emotional response seeing that the first time than she actually led on. I think that kind of says it all right there. And at the end, just learning that this person is related to her, and that, oh, he absolutely had something to do with this, with the killing. She has no choice but to bring him in.
Well, interestingly enough, she does not present the fact that she knew about the hanging when she is called to the scene. So if she's doing it to protect her identity, why not admit that she had been there before or was aware of the hanging? What does she have to prove?
Well, I think she didn't admit it there because she didn't have to. Technically, like she wasn't appearing as Angela Abar. So, but when she goes to Jane Crawford's house, the wife, she doesn't say anything. So right now she's already withholding information. I think it's just because she wasn't certain about anything yet. She heard he's got skeletons in his closet. She had to rule out all these possibilities, and then it's revealed the Ku Klux Klan uniform, like the cloak. And she immediately asks him, did you plant it there? Like, she's so convinced that that's not him, that she knew this guy. And that was told, there was such a beautiful flashback of when they're taking him down from, off of the tree, and she's hugging him, and it cuts to her and her husband on the white night. And you see that whole sequence of when their house was broken into and when all the Rorschach masks, cavalry broke in and shot her. And it's sort of unclear how she survived that, because that sequence ends with a gun in her face and then it fades to Crawford at her bedside. So for all we know, Crawford could have been that Rorschach mask. I don't know.
True.
I've just been thinking about on topic, but kind of off topic. She pulled up without her mask and everything, but then when she was reinterrogating him, she put all of it on.
She did.
And it didn't really make a lot. I mean, I guess it kind of made sense to me after you think about the hidden justice and him talking about, wearing a mask because he doesn't know who he is. So that's been kind of...
I think that's absolutely
I thought it was definitely something where she's putting on her persona. Now she's going into Sister Night mode, and therefore she needs to put on her costume, because we all wear masks, and the masks come with the clothes we wear. And we often have these saying, like, the clothes make the man, in such a way. This is actually more true for a vigilante, and especially in this form with her not arresting Will Reeves. I feel like she's taking the vigilante role more so than the detective role. As she's rolling up, we see everyone calling out, detective, detective. So now we are now confirmed the fact that the vigilantes are actually paid members of the police force. They are people who are enlisted as well.
True.
Let's talk about Will Reeves and what we think he might have as far as powers.
Right.
False or not false, Drew?
TikTok.
I don't know. I don't, we haven't seen enough. I'm not sure. I don't think he has powers. I think knowledge is his power.
Ooh. I kind of like that. Similar to maybe how Ozymandias with Jeremy Irons' character, how that knowledge is sort of his power. I think he both has friends in high places, meaning maybe someone like a Dr. Manhattan is keeping him alive this long. He said he's 102 or 105. 105, which possible, yes, but probably not as spry as he is, even though he has no use of his legs. I think he might have some power in that it is his knowledge. He might not be super smart, but maybe someone is keeping him alive because of his knowledge, and maybe they value that. So I'm still not convinced he has any powers.
So you think that being 105 is unnatural?
Yes.
Because I would say that in a technologically advanced society, as we are seeing that as built within Watchmen, that would be a natural conclusion that people live longer. We see that in our own society. We live much longer than our predecessors, and therefore a lot of it has to do with the concept of technology.
It's a good point. He's the only old character we've seen so far, so I'm not quite on board with that as of yet, but you might be right. If they show more people, or maybe have some kind of detail in the background about age... I love this technology point, but then again, they don't have cell phones. So I don't really know how advanced they are. It looks like they're advanced in certain areas that might better mankind, but not for convenience like cell phones. So it's interesting. I think that's a great point.
And we also have the coincidences, the scrambled eggs. He's able to unhandcuff himself. He's able to go across the street and come back. He's able to almost calculate the moment a phone call is coming in. The ding happens, a phone call happens, and he's already aware of the response of the phone call. Then he makes the claim that I have friends in high places, goes outside, and is able to escape through the use of at least what we could possibly imagine is an alien contraption at the most, and a man-made yet alien functioning contraption at the least, with a magnet in order to lift the entire car. How would he be able to know all these things would happen? He states that he's Dr. Manhattan. We don't think he is. However, he must be more than meets the eye.
I feel like they've mentioned Dr. Manhattan a lot this episode, even with like the weird retelling, because that wasn't how it happened, right? She was like really... She was freaked out, wasn't she?
It was a retelling. It was
but it wasn't like an
abridged version.
But I feel like, I don't know, I think Dr. last episode we briefly saw him, but was that actually him?
I think they're really hammering home. He's on Mars. Dr. Manhattan, he's on Mars, of course. Like, they're really putting that in the dialogue. And I think last episode we saw a quick video newsreel shot of him on Mars, which is very blurry. So, as far as we know, they want us to think he's on Mars.
Well, that could be your best friend. What's his name?
Damon Lindelof.
Exactly. He's very precise with his dialogue, and we all know this. There is no contraptions. He does not play time stories, which is when you just add dialogue in order to condense time. There is none of that with him, as we've seen in his past shows, such as Lost.
No filler.
So why would we keep hearing Dr. Manhattan is on Mars if it won't be part of a tell later?
It's an interesting point. I mean, maybe this could go really deep into some conspiracy, but maybe the government wants you to think he's on Mars. Maybe he disappeared, and just to keep peace, like Mars was a safe place for him. The last time he was on Earth, people don't necessarily have the best idea of him. They thought, in the comics, they thought he was causing cancer. They thought he was more of a problem than a hero. So I think that could be a unique story that we follow later down the line. More you talk about Will with these powers, he might have a psychic ability, which would be really fascinating. And it's interesting to see that might be the reason that he was able to survive this long, or that's the reason. I want to go back and see episode 1 and that first opening scene in Tulsa. Like, maybe as a kid he had that power. Maybe that's how he survived that entire occasion.
Or maybe his power is knowledge, as Drew pointed out. There is a vast insidious conspiracy at play here in Tulsa. We don't know what it is, but we do know we love talking about it with each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your comments below. And of course, the 4th member of this Horseman team is in the booth. Her name is Steph Sabra.
Steph!
How you doing, Steph?
Hello.
Hi.
I didn't know I was going to be introduced like this.
I didn't know I was going to not be invited to a party that you all go in. So that is how we are all finding out things about one another.
Look at us, all disappointed.
Look at this family we have here.
It's a very dysfunctional yet super functioning family, and we enjoy each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family.
Yeah, you guys, we're not just an after show that does comic books. We also have a lot of other channels that you guys should go and like and subscribe to. We do reality TV. We do awesome interviews. We do movies.
We got Popcorn Talk.
Popcorn Talk, Black Hollywood Live. There's some great shows over there, so you guys should go check it out. We're not just on YouTube. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so make sure you guys go check us out. Give us 5 stars. Like us right now. I'll give you a second.
Please like us, guys.
Okay, cool. You should have liked us by now. But for real, thank you guys so much for supporting us and for constantly sharing your opinions and thoughts with us. We really do appreciate it. And thanks for making us the ESPN of TV Talk.
That is right. We appreciate each and every one of you. As far as appreciation goes, we appreciated seeing the hanging of Chief Judd.
I don't know if
and when I say appreciated it, it's because it came back to play. They did not skip over this as if it happened and now we must go on. There was an actual storyline there. What were your thoughts on this reaction of seeing Chief Judd hung?
Hung by a tree, correct. Yeah. I think my reaction was, obviously, at first it was devastating, but then when you learn that he was a potential Klan member, you're like, wow, okay, there's some justice at hand, but who did the justice? Was it just Will? Was it him and other people? Why now? Like, why has it taken this long? So I thought that was really interesting. I love the flashback, like I was saying earlier, with him and Angela Abar, and just like learning about their relationship and how much that loss really does mean to her. So she really does have to be certain that he is a bad guy before doing anything, because they were obviously really close and basically partners the later years of his life. I think what I learned a lot with that is that they go to Nixonville right after that sequence because they have no one else to blame. They just assume it's them. And that whole sequence with the Russian, I guess his name's Red Scare, and just counting down, one bottle's thrown, and it's all out. Assault. I think that's going to come back next episode for sure. And she has to cool off in the car to just get away from that because she might go off. She unleashed all of her anger on that guy and just punched the shit out of him. It was nuts.
Drew, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like super heartbroken over losing him or anything because he was kind of sus all of last episode, but it was interesting to watch how different people handled him passing away from watching Looking Glass, and how he's very suspicious of everything, but he's also kind of suffering, to how she's just bottling it up, and then we see her take it out on one of the Nixonville residents, and then seeing how Red Scare just instantly went for anger. It was interesting to watch how they all
reacted very differently. I agree. I think it's very interesting that Jane and Angela processed the pain internally and internalized it. We saw Looking Glass also, in a very Rorschach manner, have emotions but hide it. And then, of course, Red Scare did go directly to anger, and the police force joined him. Watching that scene where the chief was still hung and then pulling him down, the chief meant so many things to everybody, to different people. And the question is asked, who's in charge now? Mm. Who do you think is going to step up and take that mantle?
I think it's whoever takes control of the emotions that's like the dominant emotion of everyone. So in that moment, Red Scare kind of took over because everyone was angry as hell, so he was able to channel that and lead it to Nixonville. But I think it's whoever can kind of take that anger or emotion and move with it.
I think actually Angela Abar, although won't be in the public eye because she can't reveal her identity. So I actually think it's going to be the politician character, Joe Keane.
Joe Keane.
Just Joe. Like a current politician. I think he is going to be the one that's taking over in this show because now that there's this opening in the police force, and he seemed to know maybe her identity in that one scene at the reunion or the gathering honoring his death. She said he talks to her as if she's still in the force, and she goes, "I'm retired." He's like, "Oh yeah, of course." So I think he's aware of who she is.
Yeah, I also agree that Joe Keane takes up some type of mantle. He's introduced as a character. He's got this Judd quality where we question his motives as well. I am, however, going to throw this out where I don't believe that the KKK outfit belonged specifically to Chief Judd. I believe it was his father, and the son paid for the sins of the father, ultimately looking, because we see a lot of people paying for the sins of others, especially on the Christmas surprise. We get this wonderful scene between Cal and Angela at home, sharing a love in front of a Christmas tree. We've seen them be a loving family. And then, of course, the White Night, in which the Rorschachs simultaneously attack all the police force in their homes.
Mm-hmm. What was the present? What was the present? That's what I wanted to know.
That big present?
Yeah. But that was obviously a harrowing scene. I think we might get more flashbacks like that, maybe for some of the other superhero characters like Looking Glass or Red Scare, and just see what that was like. He mentioned 40 cops were attacked, and of course her partner Topher and his wife perished. So I think that's a really fascinating look back. I'm going to mention Damon Lindelof once again, because in the Leftover season 1, Take a Drink, they kept referring back to the event where 2% of the world's population vanished. Like, where were you on the day of the 13th? Where were you on the night of the White Night? I think that's a really interesting way to tell more or learn more about certain characters through these flashbacks. He's all about flashbacks, so I don't think that's the last time we're getting a White Night flashback.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like how it did affect everyone. I was kind of waiting for them to drop how many people actually died from it, because they said 40 people were attacked, but obviously not all 40 people died. So I didn't know how big of like a massacre it is and what happened after. Like, I'm just interested to know more about what happened as a whole.
I felt when they said 40 people, it was actually kind of a low number.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be a simultaneous event all across the United States.
Do we know it's not?
We don't. But
Okay.
when the mention is 40 people were attacked simultaneously,
Right.
I feel that there would have been continuation, and it happened all across America.
And that's
In
also
every major city or something to that.
40 is
effect.
also a low number for a police force. So like what made those people like the
Particular.
targets, in comparison to the others.
Specifically Tulsa, perhaps.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Will has that line in this episode where he's like, "There's something going on. There's a big conspiracy in Tulsa. I'm not gonna lay it all for you right now because it would destroy your brain."
Vast and insidious.
Vast and insidious.
Those are very, very telling words to use. We've been hearing about the White Knight. The White Knight unveils itself. We see that Angela survives after being shot point blank. Now, Ryan, you had a theory or have a prevailing theory where the chief is actually the one who did not continue to kill Angela.
I think it was Crawford. I think it could be. I mean, that's a direct fade from that person with the shotgun to him. And this entire episode, there were a lot of match cut editing going on here with film term. I mean, we had from wristwatches to a clock to articulate the passage of time. We had her hugging Crawford to her hugging her husband. Like really unique cuts, like right on the nose. And if we're following that pattern, that means that the person with the shotgun was Crawford because it goes right into him.
Drew, are you buying into this?
I kind of am. I'm also still looking side eye at the wife of Crawford. Not saying that she did
Jane.
it, but I don't trust that she's innocent in it. So I'm looking side eye at both of
That's a
them.
good theory.
Thinking that Jane had something to do with it.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, if it's a talk on race and everything, it's really easy to view white women as victims, and no one ever suspects that they like do anything. But then when you look at, like, for instance, this this last election, they were the vast majority of people who voted for a racist president. So
It's a really good point.
Well, it's interesting to think about it. I wonder what you at home think. Let us know in the comments below. Is the chat alive with the chatter?
Chat is alive and well. We got Gracie and Ryan saying, "I agree with Ryan." Good call. I love the newsstand interaction from Shingrul, and it was probably just their district. I'm not sure if there were more. They did mention with the squids, the raining squids, there was that scene at the food truck or the newsstand where he mentioned there were 4 simultaneous cities getting rained on with squids. So
Yes.
that could, I don't know how this would connect, but that could infer like maybe those are all the districts where these attacks could have happened. Like, what is the significance of the targeted raining squids around the country, and have they never happened all at the same time before? So yeah, I mean the chat's loving it. Some people think that the FBI is going to be the ones that take over instead of Joe Keane. So yeah, the chat's alive and well. Keep commenting, guys. We'll shout you out.
We definitely love hearing from you. Let's go to Nixonville. Well,
Nixonville.
let's not go to Nixonville. It
Okay.
doesn't look like a place I'd like to go. However, it is a camp of sorts where we know that Nixon is the prevailing political ideology there, and we're going to insinuate that this is some type of racist ideology in which these are groups of people who are extreme right and are the immediate suspects for the chief's attack. What were your thoughts on this course of action, Drew?
Obviously, like, I wasn't agreeing with let's go straight to Nixonville and, get lit. But I think it's interesting that it's Nixonville and they're living kind of in poverty, and they're obviously really angry off the jump because a lot of Nixon's beliefs were that, or he helped instill the belief for a lot of super right white Americans that, the economy and how government is run isn't the problem, but it's these people of color who are coming in and, taking your spaces and taking your jobs and taking your wealth, your money. So it's really easy to direct all that anger to them. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting scene for sure. And it's interesting to see, like, some of them are living in tents and, like, trailers and all of that. I don't know.
I think it really speaks on how you might have this horrible side that's being depicted like with Nixonville, and that when a cop is attacked or killed, they are the people you immediately think because it was this that group of people that did carry out that white knight. So they are the immediately go-to. Like, oh, people to share your ideology must have done this, so let's just go there. It couldn't possibly be anyone else, which can speak on maybe what Will was planning when he hung Crawford, because maybe he just wants to take advantage of that immediate reasoning, that immediate act on judgment on it. Hey, if we just hang a police officer for our own reasoning, they won't even look at us because they're just going to assume it's Nixonville. So I think that's really, it's saying something very unique about assuming with certain crimes. So I think that just speaks on, hey, if a cop dies, they immediately look at a certain group of people, which is this carrying metaphor throughout this entire season.
Yeah, because it's interesting too. Red Scare said that some of them were cavalry and some of them weren't, and he doesn't care who was and who wasn't. So there was an acknowledgement of like, I know technically half of you aren't guilty for this, but now you're getting rounded up because you represent it, like visually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's very interesting to see a racial juxtaposition where we see this type of merit happen oftentimes in black neighborhoods, and now we're seeing an all-white neighborhood being treated in this manner. Also, it's a gross miscarriage of justice when it happens to either or. I completely believe in the justice judicial system, even though it fails us. It's not the system that fails us, it's the people behind it, and we should not allow that. In a civil society, there should be a system of checks and balances and rights, and their rights were completely violated. They were not asked questions, they were not given rights, and now we see once again a dichotomy between the first time when we saw police interaction where the police had to go through so many checks because of Panda, and now what happens when you have total martial law or martial rule in which the police have total authority to do or commit any actions which they feels upon them. I do not agree with the actions of what happened in Nixonville. It is also a gross misjustice of judicial review. It's actually very interesting to watch this happen. Interestingly enough, we get a man on the porch, and then we get a scene with Topher. Who is this man?
I'm assuming it might be the rightful guardian of the kids. So it could be Topher's brother or uncle, any kind of relative like that, and maybe he's just not a great guy. So
it's his day to check on them, but he takes a check instead.
Great line.
Yeah, I was assuming maybe like a grandfather, because he doesn't look super old, but he does look like he could be a grandpa. Maybe.
I'm thinking an uncle of the kids. I think grandfather might be a little older, unless, like you said, these technological advances in health are that good. But I mean, he wasn't that old, so I might rule out grandfather.
It's hard
Anything's
to tell
possible.
Old white men, they could be 30 or.
Well, we don't know how young Topher was. We don't know how young these parents were to begin with. So if they were really young, yeah, maybe he could be the grandfather.
I also think it's a family member that had some type of rights to the children, but clearly Angela and Cal are the ones taking care of them, and Topher is the oldest. Topher is the one who was probably the one who most understood what happened at the time, and therefore Angela does not beat around the bush and tells him directly what happened to Judd, his uncle Judd, who wasn't his real uncle anyway.
I thought it was it's interesting to see how Topher processes trauma, because like obviously the thing that happened with his parents, and then you see him watching what was the show, American Hero Story, and he's, it's giving you all these warnings, and they're not batting an eye that he's watching it, and he looks bored, almost like he's desensitized to everything that's happening. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think that's a big reflection of us right now. There's just so much like trauma porn almost in the news and in TV, and it kind of makes you desensitized to all of these things that are happening constantly.
Yeah, I think they can even speak to all those disclaimers up top are there in this version of society, and yet he still is desensitized to it, and people are always complaining that there's not enough disclaimers, there's not enough warnings, there's not enough ad blocks or anything for children. But even in a society like this one where there are, they're still as desensitized. So, like, what does it mean?
Topher obviously is no stranger to death or anything negative, and therefore Angela she sees a lot of herself in Topher. She sees a lot of herself, and we see from Topher's actions in the previous episode, he obviously has some sensitivity to any of these issues, where he gets extremely upset when someone brings up referendations towards his mother, or his adopted mother, Angela. So it's great to see that motherly instinct in Angela and that wall that exists within Topher.
The only thing that concerns me, though, is it feels a little bit like you should, just because a kid has seen it before doesn't mean that they should be handling it. And it almost seems like because of how she grew up, she's passing on this generational coping mechanism that clearly isn't necessarily healthy, because we see how it isn't the most healthy for her. But it's it's her going into survival mode, so she's kind of pushing it on him. But obviously that's not healthy for him either.
Look at Drew's motherly instincts kicking in. American Hero Story, Hood of Justice.
Really interesting world building.
Can't wait to watch that show.
Yeah, can't wait to watch it. I think that was a really unique sequence, and I think we're going to find out who that might be inspired by, or who actually donned that mask. The thought did cross my mind that what if Will was actually that hero in the past, and they just, in the movie, they got the race incorrect. That just wasn't documented, or they just didn't get it down, because I think that'll be a really unique follow-through. And I also think, he has a rope around his neck, so what did Will do? He hung Crawford, so that would fall in line with that character in that movie who has the noose around his neck. So that's an interesting, that might be getting too close to predictions right there, but I think it's just so fascinating how this show is subtly giving you an idea of what this world is like, even when Angela is talking to Topher, and he's just playing with some kind of Lego set, and it's floating. We're in this world where there's some kind of magnetism there that's allowing this whatever toy he's using to float. They have that technology. That's how people stay entertained. It's so unique, and her visit to the museum. And just learning about the history, how they have preserved this Tulsa riot history, how they acknowledge it a lot. Whereas in our world, this past week, that's all anyone was talking about because no one talked about it before. It's really fascinating world building.
The museum kind of did remind me of the African American Museum that's in D.C. now, but obviously without all of the holograms and whatnot. So I do think there's an effort being made to make things like the Tulsa Massacre more prevalent, but we still have a long way to go. But I do agree with maybe the Hidden Justice guy is Will. I didn't think about that. But
well, with the Hooded Justice, we actually know who the character is. Hooded Justice comes directly from the Watchmen.
From the Watchmen.
Hooded Justice is the original vigilantes, the first person and the charter member of the Minutemen. He had the body of a wrestler and wore a hood and a noose. It would be interesting because we never do know who Hooded Justice is. He's never given a name. So if he is Will Reeves, that would be an interesting coincidence and reveal. However, in the show, he was given the name Rolf Mueller. And in the beginning, we see Freeline Mueller is the assistant, the typist who is brought in to type that notification for the African American soldiers, which is dumped from the planes, which was something that happened during the war to dissuade African American soldiers from fighting on the side of the Americans. Because during World War II, there was a very anti-African American sentiment, and there was an actual strong push for Nazis. Let's not forget that Hitler did make the Time Man of the Year.
Yeah,
in 1936.
I was actually really interested to hear what your thoughts were on that, because it's really fascinating opening scene in this episode as well, where, like you said, it's the Nazis dropping these letters, which I guess we didn't know until this episode. That's what was on the other side of that paper Will had, and it's just kind of saying man, you're fighting for a country that's so against you, segregated, racist, and we're pretty bad, but we don't do that. We don't do that here. So what did
funny
you think
that
about
Nazis
that?
are saying that. However, at the same time, there was a sentiment that a lot of African American soldiers went overseas and then came back home to a very segregated world, and it was such a horrible position for them to be put in. And a lot of African American soldiers, including the Tuskegee Airmen, were subject to segregation even within the armed forces itself. So it's an interesting nudge. I can see why those pamphlets could work.
Really interesting method, super tactful by the Nazis, and it's carried over all the way. He's kept that letter, and is it because of what was written on the back, or vice versa? Just that sequence of him picking it because that was his father's letter, and just that's what he wrote for him. I'm really curious to see like why his father kept that entire time. Like he must have held on to that all throughout war.
So that was a reaction that became World War I when we first see the father and the son together, and we also get a lot of that backstory. What else we get is, of course, the reveal of the KKK hood that's in the closet and the memorial in which we get these characters of Joe Keane. I also enjoyed, as everyone's pointing out, the Greenwood Center for Cultural Heritage and how that plays out. Then we go to a whole different storyline that is happening simultaneously, which is Ozzy and his play. We get this reveal of Mr. Phillip and the helpers being clones.
Crookshanks.
Question mark.
Clones? Question mark.
It's all really, like, that whole storyline's really uncomfortable. I don't know, like, I don't know. There's just the replaying the cake thing every day. It seems like that's a daily routine where they celebrate him, and then to do the play, and you think, at first I was like, oh, they're robots, and well, that's what a lot of people on Twitter and stuff are saying, and I was like, oh, that sounds reasonable, but it's like, no, he was dead when he when he went in that little box and got lit up. And then for them to be revealed that they're all a bunch of, I don't know, it's just weird, and it kind of feels like sexually perverse too at the same time. Like, there's just something really weird going on there, and I don't like it. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Something really off. In fact, what's really fascinating this morning, Drink One, Damon Lindelof tweeted out screenshots of the screenplay for last week's episode for the scene with Jeremy Irons' character Ozymandias, and he was just talking about, because everyone is theorizing like, what's that have to do with the show? It feels like such a departure from the rest of the storyline. And in his writing, he's intentionally trying to get people to react like, what the heck's going on? He even writes that outside of the dialogue. Like, I want the audience to feel what is happening, what is going on, where are we? And I think that's the same exact feeling we got here, but with more context. I think that this just further pushes the point he's obsessed with Dr. Manhattan. He wrote a play about his origin story right there, just reenacting it, and he's just killing off henchmen who are just inferior to him throughout this entire process. And I thought that was such a unique reveal, pulling off the mask, showing another Mr. Phillips, calling him Montrose. Now you're Mr. Phillips. Really cool. I'm loving the cloning idea. I definitely think he's cloning people. And man, that just opens up a whole new box of worms. Like, who's cloned?
It definitely does. I got the Prestige vibes there with the clones. We do know that allegedly Tesla had created something like that. Doesn't feel that Tesla and Ozzy are so separate of people, or if Ozzy would not take up for Tesla. We will find out that and more. But for right now, let's get into our special segment, Buy or Sell, where we either buy or sell something from this week's episode. Let's start with Mr. Buy or Sell himself, Ryan Nilsen.
Man, buy or sell. So I'm going to buy car magnets at the end of this episode. Major buy on that. I think that was another night owl ship. Similar. I think there are multiple of these ships, and that might be his friend in the high place. This might be an older night owl saving Will from Angela Abar. So I am buying car magnets.
Drew, what are you buying?
I am buying, not literally, but I'm buying German propaganda. Just because I like that they're kind of slipping these history nods in there, that things that a lot of people didn't know about. So a lot of people didn't know that was going on. I think it's cool that they brought it up.
A lot of people did learn about the 1921 Tulsa riots from last week, and this week we might learn even more. I will be buying the concept of William Reeves being the person pulling all these strings. But we will find out that and more. Let's get into our news and gossip, shall we?
AfterBuzz TV News.
Getting on CNBC.com, HBO's Watchmen makes headlines as HBO's Watchmen is getting review bombed. But that won't scare off any viewers. Review bombing, as many of you know, is when people go on Rotten Tomatoes website and leave 1-star reviews, especially those who are disgruntled viewers. However, we get a 98% from critics and a 43% from audience. There's clearly a gap. A complete disrespect of the source material, said one commentator. We have enough politics in our lives right now. Can we just escape a little? No! That is what entertainment is. If you don't like it, don't watch it. However, as we know with the show's ratings, a lot of people are watching it. The show is indeed taking liberties with the source material, but if it's a victim of review bombing, writer, social media specialist, and advocate Chad McDonald said it has nothing to do with the quality of the show. It is the product of an orchestrated effort, and we should watch out for that. Beware the message, not the messenger.
Definitely.
And if you don't like what you're hearing, maybe you should be worried about why you're hearing it in the first place. Let's talk about some predictions.
Yes.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I had one earlier that I said.
Yes.
With Will potentially being
Hooded Justice
from the Minutemen. I think that would be a really cool and bold move that would definitely not help with the news you were just describing, with people who might be too loyal to the comic or just don't love the political side that it's taking. So that's my big prediction, although I will also predict, I think that everything going on with Ozymandias is just leading to a major confrontation between him and Dr. Manhattan. I think, like I said, I think he's obsessed with Dr. Manhattan. He was obsessed with him during the graphic novel, and I think we're going to get that showdown.
Drew?
I think that Judd's wife, Jane, I don't think she is all that innocent, and I think we're going to find out something about her. I don't trust her. And I think that Dr. Manhattan is not on Mars.
Interesting. I think that Chief Judd was atoning for the sins of his family and not necessarily for himself, and possibly that Will Reeves is not the last time we see him. I'm hoping to see more. Angela should have asked better questions.
Yes.
Also, with regards to the title, the Comanche are a Native American nation from the Great Plains whose historic territory consisted of most present-day northwestern Texas and adjacent areas. And they were amazing horsemen. So let's go to that, and I'm sure we'll learn much, much more. Until then, where can people find you if you want to be found? Ryan Nilsen.
Find me at Ryan Nilsen. Also, that was in the painting in the Crawford home.
It
that
was.
They zoomed in on at Ryan Nilsen _ play the outro music.
Drew, where can people find you besides the parties that you don't invite me to?
I'm your girl, Drew Jones. You guys can find me on all the things at OK Drew J. And if you like DC, check me out on Black Lightning and The Flash on Tuesdays.
And of course, I Am Tehran, literally at I Am Tehran all across the board. You can find me there, but not at Drew's parties. And you can find me hosting and paneling on a slew of other AfterBuzz after shows, because all of your favorite TV shows are my favorite TV shows too. Until next week, we will be talking way more Watchmen. Excited to hear more. See you. Who watches
TikTok.
The Watchmen?
TikTok, 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 TikTok.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.